He is the king of the Khoi people in South Africa. So King Cornelius, let's just kind of kick off things, if you don't mind, by giving us a little bit of a history about the Khoi people, but also I want to find out about you personally. But tell us about the history of the Khoi people in South Africa. How long have they been there? What's your culture all about?
Thanks for asking, Ken. My son came from school one day and he says, Dad, they say there's no Khoi people in South Africa anymore. And I said, write down. I says, in the very beginning, the only people that roamed the plains of southern Africa was the Khoi and the Bushmen. The only people. There was nobody else. And we had no name. Because when the colonials arrived in 1652, they asked us, who are you? And we said, Khoi Khoi. And Khoi Khoi means men of men. And the other people in the bush, they called them Bushmen. And then Jan van Riebeeck, the Dutchman, says, no. You'll now be called Hottentot and Bushmen. Because the language that we spoke sounded like Houty Tau. So they called us Hottentots. And then English came along later and says, now, who are you? I say, they say we Hottentot and Bushmen. And says, no, you are non-Europeans. And the Freeburgers came along later and says, now, who are you? We said, they say non-Europeans. They says, no, you are non-white. Then apartheid came along and says, now, who are you? We said, they say we're non-white. He says, no, you're colored. And then democracy came along and supposed to give us back our true identity. And it didn't. Because we believed fighting for freedom and for democracy was a major thing for us. We've never been free. We don't know freedom. For 365 years, we've been enslaved. And fighting for freedom was a big thing for us. And when we got it in 1994, with the first democracy, we went there very proud, making our mark. We are free. And it wasn't for us. It was only for the black people, because we're not black. And the rest of the world understands and believes that the Khoisan people are black. We are not black. We are the first nation, indigenous people of the land. Now, they ask now, where did the black people come from? They came down from Middle Africa. Now, a lot of people ask, how do you identify who's Khoi? And we often have an explanation. We say that when the colonials came to the Cape, they came without wives. And they consummated with the Khoi and the Bushmen. Out of that consummation was born Khoi and Bushmen. But the genes of the father were stronger, so the child came out with blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. But the other child was me. When the slaves came over in Indonesia and Malaysia, they came without wives. And they also consummated with the Khoi and Bushmen. Out of that consummation was also born Khoi and Bushmen. But the genes of the father were stronger. The child came out with sleek hair, sharp features, and a tan complexion. But the other child was me. When the blacks came down from Middle Africa and they saw how beautiful we were, they also consummated with the Khoi and Bushmen. Again, the genes of the father were stronger, so the child came out with curly hair, dark skin, and flat features. But the other child was me. But when the whites and the blacks consummated, out of that consummation was born a mulatto, which is a Griqua. But they also consummated with Khoi and Bushmen. So a lot of black people are descendants of the Khoi and Bushmen. A lot of white people are descendants of the Khoi and Bushmen. And a lot of colored people are descendants of the Khoi and Bushmen. So people are saying, the big question amongst the youth nowadays is, who am I? Where do I come from? What is my heritage? And when they go back in their family tree and they find out who their ancestors are, because a lot of them say, my great-grandfather was an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman. But my great-grandmother was a Khoi. Now, when we speak about Khoi, we speak about land also, and that is very important to us, because the land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land, and you cannot separate the two of us. So this is why the Khoi has such an affinity to the land, because the land was given to them as a gift from God to live on and to live from. And when the colonials came and they told us about the Bible that is now available, we could relate to the Bible because it was an extension of our own spirituality. So many of us attached ourselves to Christianity and many to Islam because it was an extension of their spirituality. So I think many people can read up more about the Khoisan people themselves. But I think it's important that I should speak about a little bit about me. I am the firstborn child of 16 generations dating back to 1695 of this meeting. But we were also there way before the time. And being the firstborn child of 16 generations, history has been handed down by word of mouth from generation to generation to preserve the earth and to preserve the people. And in 2001, I was taken by the elders and I was taken to the last kraal of the Khoi where I was sworn in as the king, culturally. And then I was taken to the High Court, to the Chief Magistrate, Chief Justice, and he was asked to sign a document. And he said, well, I'm too busy, but go to the Chief Magistrate, he will do it. And when I arrived at the Chief Magistrate, I says, you were asked to please sign the document. And after much deliberation, he stamped and signed it. And the document says that I am the legal custodian of all Khoisan land in South Africa, stamped by the court. And that was exciting for us because now we had some power, some voice. Because in 1999, when government was informed by the United Nations that we, the Khoi and the Bushmen, are the First Nation indigenous people of the land, they invited us to be part of the drafting of a white paper to include us into the House of Traditional Leaders that Nelson Mandela started in 1994. So we felt that we belong and we're part of. So when the document was stamped in court on the 21st, 2001, we were even more excited. In 2003, when that white paper became an act, Traditional Leaders Act of South Africa, I went forward and says, now where do we sit? And they said, sorry, it's not for you, only for the black people. But you can benefit from the act if you have an association with the black monarch. So I go and I drive 1,200 kilometers to the Eastern Cape. I go to the Black King. And when I came there, he says, I know this land is yours. I said, I didn't come for the land. I come to re-sign a peace treaty that your great-grandfather signed with my great-grandfather when he came over the Khoi River the first time. And immediately signed it. So I went back to government. I says, now we've fulfilled all the requirements to be part of the act. And they said to me, well, the act is now repealed. But we're busy drafting a new act to include you into the act. And every year they're busy drafting a new act to include us into the act. So we have no voice. In 2007, the United Nations passed the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, and we were excited. And I went forward to government and says, now you have to listen. You, with 143 other countries throughout the whole world, signed this declaration at the United Nations for the rights of indigenous people. And they said to me, you need to understand that there's no law in South Africa that says you are people. So international law cannot be applied to you. I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe it. That for the first time we realized that we are not recognized or even legislated as people. And we are 4 million people in South Africa, which means we are 4 million invisible people.
Well, let me interrupt you. When you were having this conversation, who at the United Nations specifically were you talking to?
Say again, Ken, sorry?
What person at the United Nations were you talking to?
Nobody yet. The United Nations passed the declaration. It was a declaration that was passed by the United Nations Working Group for Indigenous People.
Oh, and I see. Okay.
143 countries, including South Africa, signed that declaration. Australia, New Zealand, America, many countries, like I said, 143 of them signed it. And that is why when I went back to the government, I says, you signed this declaration for the rights of indigenous people. You must give us a voice. He says, but there's no law in our country that says you are people. So that international law cannot be applied to you. So in 2010, sorry, after many promises made by the President Jacob Zuma, before he became president, when he became president, I went to his office and they wouldn't speak to me. I went to the Human Rights Commission in South Africa and he says, you need to understand that the Human Rights Commission only deals with South African law human rights violations. not international law. I went to our public protector, who was supposed to be the watchdog for government, and she says, well, you have to speak to the minister about that. I said, but the president made promises. And then I went to the High Court. And I laid my case in front of the High Court, and I got a case number. I was so excited. There's newspaper articles. We got a case number. We're going to charge the president of South Africa for cultural genocide. We got advocates and lawyers and senior counsel, anthropologists, political science students, and they all came together. And we had a benefactor in South Africa that helped us pay this. And we appeared in front of the judge. And one day during the recession, one of the lawyers from the president's office came walking in and said, we're offering you $44 million rand out of court settlement. And I said to him, how do I divide 44 million rand into 4 million people? No, thank you. Just after that, our benefactor, who had government contracts, lost all his contracts. So he couldn't pay for the lawyers and advocates. So the matter is taken off the roll. So we have tried every avenue in South Africa to be legislated as people. Eventually we get to advocates that says, we want to charge the government again because we are not recognized as people. He says, well, do you have an identity document? I says, yes. Do you have a passport? He says, yes, then you register as a person. But we're not legislated as First Nation indigenous people. I'm registered as a South African citizen, but not as First Nation. So we get no benefits. When I talk about no benefits, there's no voice for us in Parliament. Nobody speaks on our behalf. I went over the mountain one day to visit the granny, not too far from me. And I came there and she's making a big pot of maize meal with a big spoon and she's stirring it and she's crying. I said, Granny, why are you crying? She says, my child, there won't be enough food for all the children tonight. And I have no cash on me. And she goes into the back room and she comes back with a newspaper and she tears it up and she throws it into the pot of maize meal and she stirs it, it becomes black from the ink. And she's smiling and I said, and Granny now? She says, all the children will be able to eat tonight. And then I realized that my children are eating maize meal and newspapers for supper. But the mineral wealth of our country is valued at 36 trillion rand. How can we not benefit from it? But nobody listens because nobody speaks on our behalf. So this becomes the norm. One fishing village not far from me either couldn't go fish because the weather was bad. And they phoned me and said, we had to kill the neighbor's dog to feed the children. And I got very angry. He says, oh, it's okay. Half the dog is in the fridge for tomorrow. So they have food tomorrow also. And the elder said to me, it's okay. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. What about the boy that lost his pet? And then I realized that every action our people take has consequences to it, far-reaching consequences. And the scar damage of these things remains with them forever. And then I hear my people cry and nothing's being done for them. We don't have a voice. And I look at the white people, how they cry and how they stand in the street corners begging. And how the women are being raped and murdered and gutted. How babies are being put in ovens and being burnt alive. And it's not right. It's evil. Where a man comes into the police station with a human arm and he says to the policeman, I am tired of eating human flesh now. And then they find out that the children down the road is all missing. This is not what God intended for our land. And when I listened to all the people crying and I sat down with the elders and the advisors, and I said, government is not listening to us. The world is not listening to us. What can we do? And then it was decided that we need to, you see, because before I get to that point of secession, in 2001, they wanted to build a private beach for the very rich in the waterfront in Cape Town. And the fisherman came to me and says, they're going to take away the only slipway that we used to catch subsistence fishing. Again, the politicians wouldn't listen. Nobody listened. And I went a Saturday morning and I annexed the land under international law. And then I went to the United Nations in Geneva, and I read out this letter of annexation in front of 900 different indigenous peoples and all government representatives. And I came back, and I thank God up until today, the land has not been abused. The slipway is still there for the fishermen. In 2003, my people came to me and says, a farmer just bulldozed all the ablution facilities. There's no electricity. There's no running water. Children that is 5 years old has never seen a toilet. I spoke to the farmer. He says, they must get off my land. They must get off my land. And they showed me the land, and I saw on the land was a cemetery. And the gravestones on there was from 1890 that my people were buried there already. And I knocked the board into the trees, and I said, I annex this land for the benefit of my people to live on from. And then they came and says, but you're doing what Rabbi Mugabe is doing, taking land from the farmers. I says, no, this land is being abused. So for the benefit of the people, he must rectify the abuse. Thank God, a few years later, people were reallocated. They were given houses, electricity, running water. There was deliverables to the actions. In 2009, they went to the Salem Mountain in Hout Bay, the fishing village, where my people had been living on for hundreds of years. And they were going to auction it. And Donald Trump and Oprah Winfrey and Nelson Mandela Foundation and Toku Sequoia Foundation, they were all there at the auction to buy the mountain. And the early morning in the rain, I went up into the mountain on live television. I knocked the board in the ground and I said, I annex this mountain for the benefit of my people to live on and live from. And they tried to have a private auction. And I told the auctioneer, I says, you need to tell whoever's going to buy this mountain that there's a law in South Africa that says it's a criminal offense to be in possession of stolen property. So whoever buys this mountain will be in possession of stolen property. And thank God, nobody bought the mountain. My people are still living on it and from it. So now, after doing all that ad hoc things, listen to the cry of my people, seeing how the white people are being abused and being murdered, seeing how the colored people don't have no direction. I spoke to the elders and I said, come, and we had an undertaking of unity where we invited the Afrikaner or the Boer nation. We invited the Eurokaner, the English white-speaking people. We invited the colored people. And we had an undertaking of unity that we invite them to come live in our land with us as equal, benefit from the land. Where there'd be no politics in the land. And they couldn't believe it. No politics. He says, this land will have the right to self-determination. If you have the ability and the knowledge and you experience the freedom of the right to freedom, the right not to fear, the right to exercise your opportunities and your abilities, then, and we named the place the sovereign state of Good Hope. And on the 24th of September, 2017, I went to the castle, the first point of colonialism. I knocked the board in the ground and I seceded the land away from South Africa. But I was fortunate and blessed to have a legal expert on international law and human rights law as my advisor. He just retired now from the Florida University as the law professor, Professor Winston Nagin. But he was exiled in 1963 already from South Africa, a Khoi person. And with his guidance and his knowledge, we did the secession away from South Africa, following all due processes of the law. Because we don't want them to come back and say, you're taking land or you're grabbing land. Because we had a feeling that this land grab thing is going to come into effect. So we've identified the land. It was the whole of the Western Cape, the whole of the Northern Cape, and part of the Eastern Cape until the Fish River. And with the undertaking of unity amongst the Afrikaners, the Eurokaner, and the colored people, we have about 15 million people. And then the other requirement is that we need to have a shadow government. So I approach people with the expertise, and I have an economist who's an expert in the economic field. And I have an environmentalist who's an expert environmentalist. And I have a health person who's an expert health. And I have an expert on international law. And they form part of the shadow government, that when the country is taken over or becomes a legal official country, the country can keep on running. But the most important thing in this country is that nobody will be voted in for that position, a specific position. The way it's going to work is that every portfolio, for example, health or treasury or agriculture, will have 4 people in charge of that department. One will be an Afrikaner, a Eurokaner, a Khoi, and a colored person. And out of that 4 people, they will choose one person to be the chairperson of that portfolio. But all 4 of them will make decisions for the way forward. But they will apply for the job with their CVs. So you'll have an expert or a professional doing the job so that the country can run at its optimal level. So when nobody's voted in for a position and persons applied for that position, being qualified for it, and many of the qualified people are very passionate about what they studied for. And when you put passion into work, you always have good deliverables. So this is how we worked it, and people are excited about it. And we said, if you can picture in your mind, and I often use this because it's the easiest picture to picture. You're seeing a child in the morning getting up, ready for school. And she goes outside and she washes herself in cold water. And she comes inside and she gets dressed. And she walks to school barefoot, hoping her first meal is going to be at school. That is what is happening in South Africa at the moment. In the sovereign state of Good Hope, she gets up in the morning, has a hot shower, have a breakfast, put in her shoes, go to school, knowing that her future is determined by her own input. Her self-determination, her destiny is determined by what she's going to put into. She's going to get out. Now, if you put the 2 pictures together in your mind, that is hope. And this is what the sovereign state of Good Hope stands for. The opportunity where nobody's going to tell you what you must do. One of my visions or my desires, and I spoke to the economist, I says, I would like to give, this is my wish, I would like to give every legitimate citizen in the sovereign state of Good Hope 100,000 rand. Which is only $8,000, but 100,000 rand. They said, why? I says, immediately, you'll have no more hungry people. Immediately. And then we have television programs and radio programs of how people can become entrepreneurs. And how can they start their own businesses. Because if you have 5 people in a family, you have 500,000 rand. And immediately you can start a business. Because many people have visions and ideas, but no capital to start with. So they're still busy working on how to implement it. But that is one of my wishes. So when there's no more hungry people, let me explain to you why I came up with this idea. The world says, don't give a man a fish to feed him for a day, but teach him how to fish to feed him for a lifetime. I say it's wrong. I say, give a man a fish, for you do not know when last he ate. And then you teach him how to fish. But above all, show him where to fish. Because once he's caught the fish, you can now teach him how to sell it. And now you can walk away. He's self-sustainable. And when we implement that vision in the sovereign state of Good Hope, we know that the people will become self-sustainable. There'll be no demand on the government for handouts. If you've wasted your money, or you're going to go work in a guana factory, you're going to work as a candy striper, you're going to work, but you're going to work for your money. But if you have listened and you exercise your right to self-determination, you're going to be so empowered that you're going to work for yourself. Now, with this vision in mind, people are saying, oh, this is too good to be true. No politics in the country where no politician is going to tell you what you must do and how you're going to do it, and these are the laws of the country. But the biggest concern was, now, King, you being the king of the country, how are you going to rule the country? I said, whoa, you need to understand. Well, how are you going to govern the country? I said, that's not my job. to govern the country belongs to the people with the qualifications to govern that country. My sole responsibility is to see that the country is not abused and the people is not abused. That is my sole responsibility. And now people understand that it's not a monarch that dictates and says, but just to oversee and to prevent what has happened in the past never ever happens again in the future. But the people say, yeah, but you need to understand, we come out of apartheid and we come out of colonialism, that the Boers have killed our people. I says, yes, they did. Yes, they did. They have done atrocious things to my people. But there's nothing we can do about it. Those people that did the murders and the killings and the atrocities, they're all dead. The history allows us to make decisions for the present so that our future can be better. And learning from the history, well, we have forgave them for what they did, because there's nothing we can do to change it. But the present atrocities, this we must change, because we have it in hand. God has given us the ability, the knowledge, and the courage to change the things, so we must change it. And one other thing is the country is going to be governed under God first, because people have lost their spirituality. They have become so egotistical and it's all about me, myself, and I. And they're not thankful anymore. It's not our culture. It's our culture to be thankful and grateful people. I often say to people, we are the only people in the world that has 3 words for thank you. I would say guns, which means thanks. I would say kayayos, which means big thank you. And when I say kamako, I say thank you with deep gratitude. So we understand what God has given to us as a gift, so we're grateful for it. And we want to share that gratitude with everybody else. That's why we invited the Boers and the Eurokaners and the Coloureds, just come live with us. Because you're all the minorities with us. And we see what is happening to you. So here we have an opportunity for a land of not milk and honey, but freedom. And the right to choose your own destiny. And a lot of people ask now, where's the money going to come from? Because that's always the big question. Where's the money going to come from? The Western Cape province is a province within South Africa. We have 12 big provinces, but Western Cape, the province, one of the provinces, generates 185 billion rand a year on taxes. And it gives national government 185 billion. National government gives back 45 billion, and they manage on it. So only the Western Cape itself will have at its disposal 185 billion to work with, to eliminate all injustices and poverty immediately. So, but that's the economist's business. They know how to do that. That's not my business. So the next step to make our country an official country is to come to the United Nations to inform them that there's that we have seceded from South Africa. And now a sovereign state called the Sovereign State of Good Hope.
Okay, how do you pronounce it? You pronounce it Good Hope?
As in good and hope.
Good hope. Okay, I heard Good Hope, but it's Good Hope.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. You're the king of the Khoi people. How does one obtain that position? How did you become the king of the Khoi people? Was this a birthright? Were you elected? How did that happen? And by the way, before you answer, Sonny, your mic is distorting. I had to mute you, but I'm going to try it intermittently to see if it's back on. So, how did you become the king?
I said earlier, I am the firstborn child for 16 generations.
16 generations.
Yeah, dating back to 1695, that is written. It is written that all my whole ancestry tree, and if you go into the website of sovereignstateofgoodhope.org, you'll see my family tree.
Okay, I will do that. It's a sovereign state. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. You're not going to see it, but the folks at home can see it.
Yeah.
Sovereign State of Good Hope.
.org.
Okay, I interrupted you. Go ahead. You were saying your generations go back.
So, according to the Bible and according to our culture, every firstborn child becomes the king. In 1910, my great-grandfather, let me go back before that. In 1834, when slavery was abolished in South Africa by the English, my one great-grandfather became so frustrated because they had to serve another 4 years of apprenticeship before they really were free. And then he took his people fighting all the way up along the west coast, and they went to a place called Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia today. And he named the town called Klein Windhoek in Namibia, which is the capital of Namibia now. And they were fighting the Rerus and the Wambos and the Germans that came in, all the colonials. But at the same time, while they were fighting there, my other great-grandfather of the Khoi Clan dynasty of the Khoi. Now, South Africa was divided into two monarchies. The one was below the Fish River, and the one was above the Fish River. And the one below the Fish River was called the Jan Jonker dynasty. The one above the Fish River was called the Khoi Clan dynasty of the Khoi, the big defenders, because they defended against the Khoisans and the Nguni clans coming down from Middle Africa. So after they were defeated by the Ngunis and the Dutch coming in 1777 with the Katrefiel Rebellion, they left and they went to Namibia to help Jan Jonker fight. And in 1858, Jan Jonker and Cornelius signed a peace treaty that they are the only two monarchs of the Khoi of Southern Africa. And that was done at the place called Honduras in Southwest Africa. So Jan Jonker was killed, and then his son Christo took over. And 3 years later, he was killed, and his brother Jan Jonker Afrikaner took over. But Jan Jonker Afrikaner only had a daughter, and her name was Maria Jonker Afrikaner. And she was moved out of Southwest Africa to go live, out of Namibia, to go live in a place called Marmarie. When Cornelius was killed in 1863, his son Barnabas took over. When he was killed, his son Petrus took over. And then Petrus left. When Jan Jonker was killed, Petrus left and went to fetch Maria Jonker Afrikaner, and the two of them got married. So the two royal families then got married, became one royal family. And then they were given a horse racing farm in a place called Dordrecht in the Eastern Cape, where my grandfather, the firstborn son, was born, David Daniel Cornelius, out of the union of the two royal families. And he was cut under his feet as the firstborn son of the king. And then in 1910, coming back to 1910, when Afrikanerdom came into power, the land was taken away from them so that the people could be leaderless, and they were chased away. And then my grandfather then came to Cape Town, where he met my grandmother, and her name was Henrietta Arendse, and the two of them married. And their firstborn son's name was John Peter Cornelius, and he met my mother named Teresa Magdalena Roman. And their firstborn son is Calvin, then with John Cornelius, and that's me. And this is why I am called the third, because I'm the third out of the union of the two royal families. So many people ask me now, why Khoebaha? Khoebaha is my praise name. It means man coming. But in my culture, I am called Gaub. Gaub means head of. In the English translation, it means king. So all English people would call me king or your majesty or your highness. But people would address me as Gaub Khoebaha. So I was taken by the elders, like I mentioned earlier, in 2001, and sworn in traditionally as the king of the Khoi. So I'm the only bloodline king of the Khoisan people of Southern Africa.
Okay, at what point were you sworn in as a king of Khoi?
Say again?
What was the date when you were signed in or sworn in rather, as the king of the Khoi? What date did that happen? 19th
of January 2001.
2001, so that's 17 years ago, about.
17 years ago.
Cool. Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
A few years ago, with this new act of government that says traditional leaders act and need to be part of, I read through the act and I saw that part of the act says that the royal family has to appoint the king. So I went. Fortunately, my parents are still alive and they are celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary this year. So I go to mom and dad and I says, Dad, as your firstborn son, I need you to write down. And he writes down, he says, I, John Peter Cornelius, firstborn son of David Daniel Cornelius, bequeath the kingship to my son Calvin. And my mother says exactly the same. And they both sign it. So I have a document that says that my parents has bequeathed the kingship to me as their firstborn son. So I fulfill all international requirements to be the king.
So there's no dispute, no serious dispute that you are the king of the Khoi people.
Absolutely. They might not like it. Some of them might not like it. Some of them might want to wish me away. Some of them would want to pray me away, but I am the king.
Okay, now, so in 2017, the Khoi people effectively proclaimed, issued a proclamation, what would you call it, of independence, that you are now an independent nation?
We call it a declaration of secession.
The Declaration of Secession. Okay,
Yeah.
What international leader, I know you've gotten a lot of international media attention, not as much as you should have, but how is the international community responding? I mean, to my knowledge, nobody has recognized your sovereignty. So how are they responding? Are they taking you seriously? Or are they wait and see what happens? With this situation in South Africa, just about anything could happen. So, how is the international community reacting, responding? Or they just sit back and let's see how this plays out?
The international community, the people I speak to, and the people that have heard this, their response is, it's too good to be true. That's too good to be true. But they're excited about it because nowhere in the world is there a country that has the value systems, that has the principles, that has the right to self-determination exercised in their country. South Africa has barred all media from telling people about the sovereign state of Good Hope. So we have no television coverage of the sovereign state of Good Hope. We have no radio coverage. We have no newspaper coverage. The day of the secession in the castle, when I arrived there, a drone appeared over my head. And 12 minutes into the declaration of secession, all internet was cut. So we knew that we had a tough fight coming our way. Fortunately, one independent media house, radio station, called about a topic about the Khoisan people. And I mentioned to them about the sovereign state of Good Hope. And I said, go look up the website. They called me back a week later at 5 minutes past 12 the night when everybody was sleeping. They interviewed me about the sovereign state of Good Hope. But I was clever. I recorded that in the radio conversation. And normally, all the radio interviews goes on YouTube. That particular interview was nowhere, it's gone. So I was fortunate to have a copy of the interview. Nowhere in South Africa is people talking about the sovereign state of Good Hope. Government ignores all documentation that was given to them. So we have a problem, not really a problem, we are a bit concerned that because nobody listens to us, and the international media is starting to listen to us. What's even more frustrating, Ken, is that I've traveled 47 hours. I've traveled 47 hours to come to the United Nations to tell them what has happened in South Africa, to ask them nothing. Because the first question they asked me at the United Nations was, what do you want from us? I said, I want nothing.
Well, who at the United Nations are you talking to? I mean, is there somebody designated to deal with indigenous people groups?
They told me the indigenous people's platforms is in Geneva.
Okay.
But our platform we need is the General Assembly and the Permanent Forum. Because I've come to apply for an observer status on the General Assembly or the Permanent Forum. Because we don't want to be an isolated country. We want to have multilateral and bilateral arrangements with other countries via the United Nations. Seeing that the United Nations is the controlling body, allegedly controlling body for all other countries in the world. So let's follow all due processes again. So I come to the United Nations, it says, well, the president of the General Assembly is on tour to Colombia, and he can't see you. And I said, and the Secretary General, no, they can't see you. I said, okay, is there anybody that can just take a document from me saying that I've handed over this document of Declaration of Secession, so you know what I'm talking about? And they tell me, no, nobody is allowed to take any documents, even though they have all the emails to them of the declaration, of all the other supporting documents, but nobody is allowed to take a document.
Okay, now that document is available on your website. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So
yes, it is.
If I want to read it, anybody on the planet?
Anybody can read it. It's available to anybody to read. It's called the Declaration of Secession of South Africa, of the sovereign state of Good Hope. So my plight in New York, that's why I'm here, to go to the United Nations just to hand over the document. But I'm quite baffled, because in reply from one of the emails, I see at the bottom of the email, it says, please respect the environment. If you really have to print this email, print it. If you don't have to, don't do it, because don't waste paper. But they want a hard copy from me. Now, we understand. No, let me not say what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you say, because people do listen.
So my flight in New York now, and I only have a few days left. I'm flying out again within a few days.
Yeah, I guess we should make it clear you are in New York State right at this very moment, right?
This very moment, going to the United Nations, looking for somebody just to take a document from me and says, I want nothing from you.
Yeah, now when did you go to the United Nations? You do this today or yesterday?
I did it yesterday, and they told me, no, you can't. And then I came back, and fortunately with Karen's help, we sat down and we strategized what we're going to do tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to go back again. And I say to them, you need to understand, I'm Khoi. I'm so thick-skinned. Their actions won't harm me. I need to do this to save 15 million people. And I said to one of the ladies from the United Nations, I said to her, you need to understand that for 365 years, nobody listened to us. Nobody listened. And now I travel 47 hours to come here, and you don't want to listen to me. Now, I'm not only speaking on behalf of the 4 million Khoisan people. I'm speaking on behalf of 15 million people in the sovereign state of Good Hope. Because when the sovereign state of Good Hope becomes a legal country, I wish and I pray that we're going to have a peaceful secession. That's my prayer, peaceful. But it might not be. And we have to be realistic about it. It might not be peaceful. So I've come to tell the United Nations is, if it is not peaceful, don't say I didn't come tell you. This is why I want to hand over the document to you. And nobody wants to take it from me. So I hope that my attempt tomorrow is going to be more successful. And I pray that it's going to be more successful.
So what is your plan tomorrow? Do you have somebody specifically you're going to go talk to?
Yeah, but I can't tell you yet. Otherwise, it's not going to be a secret. Otherwise, they're not going to be surprised.
Ah, you can't tell me. So the South African ambassador to the United Nations, I'm assuming, wants nothing whatsoever to do with you. Is that correct?
The first thing they asked me, did you have permission from the South African ambassador, the South African embassy? I said, I'm not a South African. I come from the sovereign state of Good Hope. I have no part of South Africa anymore. I come here from a free country. So I am the ruler of the country. So I come here as the ruler to tell you that my people is going to need the support and input and relationships with the United Nations. So the South African government is trying and hoping in my interpretation that if they ignore this, it will go away. Now we know with the new thing happening in South Africa now with the land grabs, where the ANC government has approved that expropriation of land without compensation. My wife told me now, earlier, that land is being taken now already. Before the act is passed, it's been taken now already. There was one place where 7 people were killed. Expropriation of land without compensation. They are just taking because the government says they can. Now, I thank God that I was inspired to do the secession before this decision was made by the ANC government to expropriate land without compensation. And what is difficult for me to understand is that Uganda had that years ago. And Robert Mugabe had it years ago, and they saw the results. And they went to do exactly the same thing, but a bit more evil.
Well, it worked out very good for Mugabe. I mean, not for anybody else. So my guess is, what is his name? Ramaphosa? Is that pronounced correctly?
Yeah, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah, I don't think he cares about South Africa. In my opinion, you can tell me what you think. I don't think he cares about the people. I don't think he cares about the economy. I think he cares about himself. And if expropriating land helps him personally, he's all for it, which is the same thing that Mugabe did. So, what is your take on that? And not just that, since the topic is up, what is your, on the table, what is your opinion of Ramaphosa?
I haven't met him personally.
You got to be careful because he may be listening.
I hope he listens. I hope he
agents
listens.
are listening.
All listen. I wish and I pray they listen. You see, I have a saying in life that says, truth spoken with kindness frees much more than it hurts. And truth spoken with aggression becomes a curse. So all I'm speaking is I'm speaking the truth with kindness. A few years ago, I was invited, I was flown down to Johannesburg. I'm from Cape Town. I was flown down to Johannesburg, 2.5-hour flight, to meet Cyril Ramaphosa, the deputy president. He was the deputy president at the time, to meet his spokesperson, Ronnie Moepa. We sat around the table, had supper, and I explained to him the plight of the Khoisan people.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Tell me once again, who are you talking to?
I was speaking to the spokesperson of Cyril Ramaphosa when he was still deputy president.
I see. All right.
So the spokesperson of the deputy president says, I will tell him. I will tell him. So that we can set up a meeting so that he can hear it from the horse's mouth. Ronnie had died. He became the president, and he still hasn't spoken to me. So I don't know if he'll ever speak to me. But very soon he will be forced to come speak to me. You see, when we become a legal country, and again, I pray, I wish that our transition to the sovereign state of Good Hope becomes peaceful, is where we invite him to come and sit and talk to us. So I think that will be the first time when I meet him. I cannot form an opinion of him because I haven't spoken to him.
Yeah, what will happen if they just ignore you? They say, okay, this is a bunch of goofballs. I'm assuming goofball is a South African. You can't comprehend that. These people are just off-the-wall wackos. Let's just ignore them, and they're going to go away. Because that's what I think they're probably doing, is they're just going to ignore you. So the question is, what if they do that? What if Ramaphosa and his cabinet and his cronies, let's call them that, what if they just say, okay, let's just ignore this guy. Let's pretend he doesn't exist and just go on as if nothing is happening. Then what are you going to do?
Again, I'll reiterate it. I pray that we have a peaceful secession. I pray.
So it may not be peaceful.
It may not be. You cannot say.
Okay,
May not be.
Do you have a military? Do you have people willing to take up arms and defend their land? Or you can't say that, can you?
We're ready.
You are ready. You are prepared.
Are ready for our sovereign state of Good Hope. We're ready.
Okay, a couple of the questions I want to ask while I still have you. First of all, you know that Australia, I think just today or yesterday, has placed on the table a proposal to allow white South Africans, farmers in particular, to migrate as refugees from South Africa to Australia. I want to get your impression of that scenario as a whole. But what would happen if the white farmers took up Australians on that offer, and you lost 2 or 3 million white farmers? How would that impact South Africa? Would your stock market crash? Would the economy fall to pieces? Would there be revolution in the street? Or would Ramaphosa just say, well, good riddance, goodbye, we're going to go on?
Oh, you know the story I told about the girl getting dressed, going to school? I don't want to picture it. I don't want to picture this. But the white farmers won't leave. You see, they won't leave. What people don't understand is that this is also their home. They've also been born here. If they leave, they become adopted children in another country. And an adopted child has benefits, but very little privileges. And he has never had that sense of belonging, never had that sense of ownership because he's an adopted child. So I can rather live in a country that is free, country that has given me the right to determine my own destiny, a country where no politician will tell me what to do, a country where there's no race, a country that I can become economically empowered by because I know how to work the land, or go to a country that never be my own. So the invitation is there, but they won't go. I know they won't go.
Yeah, I have spoken to a few white South Africans that if they had the opportunity, they would leave, but they can't afford it. They say the white South Africans, if they could leave, they'd be gone. But I've talked to many who say, Ken, we're Africans. We're not Europeans. We're not Australians. We're not Americans. They self-identify as Africans. And like you say, there's many, I don't know about all of them, but there are many, they're just not going to leave because that's their home. They're going to do whatever they have to do to stay put.
And protect what they have. And protect what they have. Now, we understand that the economy, a lot of people know about apartheid in South Africa. A lot of people know about it, and they don't like apartheid. But we are living now in economic apartheid. People saying, but they are unemployed. Why is there 11 million homeless people in South Africa? Because there's no work for them. Why is 27% of our population unemployed? Unemployed. 50% of that is the youth. There's no capital. There's no human capital involvement.
So why don't they leave? Do you call these people Bantu, the black South Africans? If there is no employment, why don't they go to Namibia or Zimbabwe or just Sudan, just any place? Is it worse everywhere else?
I don't hope so. You see what happened again? When colonials came and they took our land from us by force.
So you're talking the Dutch, the English.
The Dutch and the English and everybody came, they took the land by force away from the Khoi. And for years they benefited from the land. For years they benefited from it. Until they gave the land away for nothing to the black man. For nothing.
Why did they do that?
About the money.
Yeah, to me it seems insane because correct me if I'm wrong here, but when the Dutch showed up, what was it, 1653 when they established their colony, the people who lived in what is now South Africa, what we now know as South Africa, were the Khoi and the Sans groups. But the Bantu were nowhere to be found. So the whites did not take the land from the Bantu, from the black South Africans, or the black Africans. If they took it from anybody, they took it basically from the Khoi.
I have categoric, the politicians use the word so easy. I have categoric proof. I have proof that the blacks never came over the Khoi River before the 1700s. Never.
Okay, now where's the Khoi River?
The Khoi River it's about 1,600 kilometers from Cape Town.
Okay.
It's that far north, along the east coast.
Okay, let's go back in time. So the blacks came across the Kai River when?
In 1745.
1745. Let's go back in time 10,000 years. So, or 50,000 years. So from 50,000 years BC up until 150 years ago, the Bantu never came to South Africa. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There was no black people in South Africa.
All right. How did these people, Ramposa and his thugs, how did they say, we're taking this land, our land, back from the white farmers when they never had it in the first place? Never, ever. I mean, if anybody owned it, it was the Khoi and the San. Is that correct?
Yes, but then we need to understand that this old saying in life that says absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yep.
So when you have absolute power, you take authority over everything that you want to. And they've taken authority over all the people in the land, including the Khoisan people, and taken away their identity, taken away their language, taken away their land, and made them invisible people. So when you're invisible, you don't have a voice, you're not seen. The white people that were there, that gave away the land for nothing to the black people, has now become virtually invisible. And I say to them, I say to the white farmers, I say, I can understand how you feel. We have become complacent in our 365 years of oppression. You're only going through this for 30 years, only 30 years. We've gone through this for 365 years. So we know how you feel. And this is one of the reasons why we invited them along and says, come live in our land. Come live with us. Come share. The only way to build a land, build a country, is to invest in human capital. Now, when you invest in human capital, you invest in human intelligence. You invest in human skill.
Aptitude.
Now, the sovereign state of Good Hope is offering that to all its citizens. Now, can you imagine what it would be like if everybody that has the ability and the opportunity can implement it for free, with no oppression, with no fear? This is why they won't go to Australia. This is why they're all coming back to the sovereign state of Good Hope. And this is why I know that, I can't say it, I know that we'll be safe in the sovereign state of Good Hope. We put it that way.
Well, the sovereign state of Good Hope is effectively the western half of what is now South Africa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the dominant where the Khoisan people lived all their life. It used to be called the Cape Colony before, during the apartheid years, was called the Cape Colony. That was the whole Cape Colony that was seceded, that became the sovereign state of Good Hope.
Okay, we are out of time. We've been talking with King. You're going to have to help me pronounce your name. Khoebaha Cornelius III. And we've also been talking to Sonny Thomas, whose mic has failed. So if you say, why is he sitting there? We can see Sonny, but we can't hear him. It's because we're having audio difficulty, and I can tell from the smile on his face, he can hear me, and he's waving, so sorry about that. But Sonny is not somebody who can't talk. It's just a technical problem. So, King Khoebaha Cornelius III, if you have time, and I know you're a busy guy, but I would love to do this again.
Well, I would feel honored, Ken and Sonny, for the two of you making the time and taking the time to hear my plight and to listen to the plea of my people and to put it out here in America so that the Americans can understand that there's a new country of hope, that if ever you want to come visit me, you book a plane ticket and says, I'm going to Good Hope. And you're welcome to come. We like human capital injection in our country. So to both of you and to all your listeners, again, I use all three words of thank you. Gangans, Kayayos, and Tramako. So thank you with deep gratitude to all of you. And God bless you in what you're doing, Ken and Sonny.
And you are very welcome. How do you say you're very welcome in the Khoi language?
Tramako.
Okay, very good. And thanks to Karen Smith. I know she's in the background there listening in, so thank you, Karen, so very much. Okay, guys, have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night, Ken. Thank you, Sunny. Bye-bye.